八义 Chapter 3。一孔子谓季氏，八义五于庭，是可忍也，孰不可忍也。The head of a powerful family of nobles in Confucius' native state employ 8 sets of choristers in their family chapel. Confucius, remarking on this, was heard to say, if this is allowed to pass, what may not be allowed? 二三家者以雍彻。子曰：相为辟公，天子穆穆，悉取于三家之堂。The members of a same powerful family mentioned above concluded the service in their chapel by chanting the hymn used only on occasions of imperial worship. Confucius remarked on it, saying, the words of the hymn begin, surrounded by his nobles and princes. August the Son of Heaven looks. Now what is there in the chapel of this noble family to which those words of the hymn can be applied? 三子曰：仁而不仁，如礼和；仁而不仁，如乐和。Confucius remarked, if a man is without moral character, what good can the use of the fine arts do him? If a man is without moral character, what good can the use of music do him? 四邻访问礼之本。子曰：大哉问！礼，与其奢也，宁俭；丧，与其义也，宁戚。A disciple asked what constituted the fundamental principle of art. That is a very great question. Replied Confucius, but in the art used in social usages it is better to be simple than to be expensive. In rituals for the dead, it is better that there should be heartfelt grief than minute attention to observances. 伍子曰：夷狄之有君，不如诸夏之王也。Confucius remarked, the heathen hordes of the north and east, even, acknowledge the authority of their chiefs, whereas now in China respect for authority no longer exists anywhere. Footnote 9. The watchword of Chinese chivalry is 尊王攘夷, honor the king and break the heathen. These 4 words, taken in their true sense and not in their common vulgar sense, have created the modern Japan of today. Tennyson, interpreting the chivalry of Europe in the dialect of Europe, makes his knights of chivalry swear to reverence the king as if he were their conscience, and their conscience as their king, to break the heathen and uphold the Christ. 六季侍旅于泰山。子谓冉有曰：女弗能就与？对曰：不能。子曰：呜呼！曾为泰山，不如临放乎？ The head of the powerful family of nobles mentioned in section 1 of this chapter was going to offer sacrifice on the top of a great Tai mountain. Confucius then said to a disciple who was in the service of the noble, can you not do anything to save him from this? No, replied the disciple, I cannot. Ah, then, answered Confucius, it is useless to say anything more. But, really, do you think that the spirit of the great mountain is not as Lin Fang? Footnote 10. The name of the disciple who asked the question in section 4 of this chapter. The point in the reference in this last sentence, we confess, we do not understand. 其子曰：君子无所争，必也射乎？揖让而生，下而饮，其争也君子。Confucius remarked, a gentleman never competes in anything he wins. He courteously makes his bow before he advances to take his place among the winners. And when he has lost, he walks down and drinks his cup of forfeit. Thus, even in this case of competition, he shows himself to be a gentleman. 八子夏问曰：巧笑倩兮，美目盼兮，素以为炫兮，何谓也？子曰：会试后素。曰：礼后乎？子曰：其余者商也。师可与言师已矣。A disciple asked Confucius for the meaning of the following verse. Her coquettish smiles, how dimpling they are. Her beautiful eyes, how beaming they are. Oh, fairest is she, who is simple and plain. In painting, answered Confucius, ornamentation and color are of secondary importance compared with the groundwork. Then art itself, said the disciple, is a matter of secondary consideration. My friend, replied Confucius, you have given me an idea. Now I can talk of poetry with you. Footnote 11. Beauty unadorned is adorned the most. The last line in Chinese is an exact translation of Horace's Simplex Munditius. The English student may here remember Tom Moore's lines. Lesbia has a beaming eye, but no one knows on whom it beameth. 九子曰：下礼吾能言之，其不足止也；殷礼吾能言之，宋不足止也。文献不足故也，足则吾能止之矣。Confucius remarked to a disciple, I can tell you of the state of the arts and civilization during the Xia dynasty, but the modern state of Xi cannot furnish sufficient evidence to prove what I say. I can tell you of the state of the arts and civilization during the Yin dynasty, but the modern state of Song cannot furnish sufficient evidence to prove what I say. The reason is because the literary monuments extant are too meager. Otherwise I could prove to you what I say. Footnote 12, see Note, Chapter 2, Section 23. 十子曰：弟自继冠而亡者，无不欲观之矣。 Confucius remarked that the service of a great tea sacrifice, the Mass in ancient China, I always make it a point to leave as soon as the pouring of the libation on the ground is over. 11. 或问帝之说。子曰：不知也。知其说者之于天下也，其如是诸斯乎？知其长。Somebody asked Confucius for the meaning of the great tea sacrifice mentioned above. I do not know, answered Confucius. One who understands its significance will find it as easy to rule the world as to look at this thus, pointing to the palm of his hand. 12. 祭如在，祭神如神在。子曰：吾不与祭，如不祭。Confucius worshipped the dead as if he actually felt the presence of the departed ones. He worshipped the spiritual powers as if he actually felt the presence of the powers. He once remarked, if I cannot give up heart and soul when I am worshipping, I always consider as if I have not worshipped. 13. 王孙贾问曰：与其昧于傲，宁昧于躁，何谓也？子曰：不然，获罪于天，无所导也。An officer in a certain state asked Confucius, saying, What is meant by the common saying it is better to pray to the god of the hearth than to the god of the house? Not so, replied Confucius. A man who has sinned against God, it is useless for him to pray anywhere at all. 14. 子曰：周见于二代，郁郁乎文哉！吾从周。Confucius remarked, the civilization of the present Zhou dynasty is founded on the civilization of the two preceding dynasties. How splendidly rich it is in all the arts! I prefer the present Zhou civilization. 15. 子入大庙，每事问。或曰：孰谓邹人之子之礼乎？入大庙，每事问。子闻之曰：是礼也。When Confucius first attended the service at the state cathedral, ancestral temple of the reigning prince, he inquired as to what he should do at every stage of the service. Somebody thereupon remarked, Who tells me that the son of the plebeian of Shou is a man who knows the correct forms? When Confucius heard of the remark, he said, That is the correct form. Footnote 13. A district where Confucius' father had been chief magistrate. 16. 子曰：射不主皮，为利不同科，古之道也。Confucius remarked, in archery, putting the arrow through the target should not count as points, because the competitors cannot all be expected to be equal in mere physical strength. At least, that was the old rule. 17. 子贡欲去告朔之细阳。子曰：次也，而爱其羊，我爱其礼。A disciple wanted to dispense with the sheep offered in sacrifice in the religious ceremony held at the beginning of every month. What you would save, said Confucius to him, is the cost of the sheep. What I would save is the principle of the right. 18. 子曰：事君尽礼，人以为谄也。 Confucius remarked, Men now account it servile to pay to their prince all the honors due to him. Footnote 14. See note, section 5 of this chapter. 19定公问，君使臣，臣使君，如之何？孔子对曰：君使臣以礼，臣使君以忠。The reigning prince of Confucius' native state asked Confucius how a prince should treat his public servant and how a public servant should behave to his prince. Let the prince, answered Confucius, treat his public servant with honor. The public servant must serve the prince, his master, with loyalty. 20子曰：冠居，乐而不淫，哀而不伤。Confucius remarked,The first ballad in the Book of Ballads and Songs expresses the emotions of love. It is passionate, but not sensual. It is melancholy, but not morbid. Footnote 15. See Note, Chapter 2, Section 2. 21哀公问射于宰我。宰我对曰：夏后氏以松，殷人以柏，周人以栗，曰使民战栗。子闻之曰：诚实不说，岁时不见，既往不咎。The reigning prince of Confucius' native state asked a disciple of Confucius about the emblems used on the altars to the titular genius of the land. The disciple answered, The sovereigns of the house of Xia planted the pine tree. The people of the Yin dynasty adopted the cypress, and the people of the present Zhou dynasty has chosen the li, chestnut, tree as a symbol of all, li, to the population. When Confucius afterwards heard of what the disciple said, he remarked, It is useless to speak of a thing that is done, to change a course that is begun, or to blame what is past and gone. Footnote 16. The adoption of these emblems in old China is like the modern emblems of the rose for England and not of fleur-de-lis for the house of Bourbon in France. 22子曰：管仲之器小哉？或曰：管仲简乎？曰：管氏有三规，官事不赦，焉得简？然则管仲之礼乎？曰：邦君戍塞门，管氏亦戍塞门。邦君为两军之好，有反殿，管氏亦有反殿。管氏而知礼，孰不知礼？ Confucius, speaking of a famous statesman, remarked, Quan Chang was by no means a great-minded man. But, said somebody, Quan Chang was simple in his life, was he not? Why, replied Confucius, Quan Chang had that magnificent sensuous pleasance of his. Besides, he had a special officer appointed to every function in his household. How can one say that he was simple in his life? Well, rejoined the inquirer, but still, Quan Chang was a man of taste who observed the correct forms, was he not? No, answered Confucius. The reigning princes have walls built before their palace gates. Quan Chang also had a wall built before his door. When two reigning princes meet, each has a special buffet. Quan Chang also had his special buffet. If you say Quan Chang was a man of taste, who is not a man of taste? Footnote 17. It is curious that Quan Chang, the Bismarck of ancient China, adopted the same motto in politics as that famous motto of the modern founder of the German Empire. Do, you in Chinese 欲取之故与之。23子与鲁大师乐，曰：乐其可知也。始作，细如也，从之，纯如也，矫如也，亦如也，已成。Confucius remarked to the Grand Kapellmeister of his native state, I think I know the way in which a piece should be played with a full orchestra. At first, the full volume of sound in the piece should be heard. Then, as you proceed, you must pay attention to and bring out each note of the piece, distinct and clear, but flowing, as it were, without break or interval, thus to the end. 24仪封人请见，曰：君子之之于斯也，吾未尝不得见也。从者见之。出曰：23子，何患于丧乎？天下之无道也久矣，天将以夫子为木铎。An officer in command of a certain pass on the frontier where Confucius on his travels was passing, asked for the permission to be presented to him, saying, "Whenever a wise man passes this way, I have always had the honor to wait upon him." When the officer came out of the interview, he said to the disciples, "Gentlemen, why should you be concerned at your present want of official position? The world has long been without the order and justice of good government. Now God is going to make use of your teacher as a tocsin to awaken the world. 25子未韶，尽美矣，有尽善也；未午，尽美矣，未尽善也." Confucius, speaking of a famous piece of music, the most ancient then known in China, remarked, "It has all the excellence of the physical beauty of harmony, but it has not all the excellence of moral grandeur." 26子曰：“居上不宽，为礼不敬，临丧不哀，吾何以观之哉？" Confucius remarked, "Possession of power without generosity, courtesy without seriousness, mourning without grief, I have no desire to look at such a state of things."